Thank you for the intro. Hope you all can hear me well. Yeah, and apologies in advance for not being there in person. That was the plan. Unfortunately, life happens, and I had some family things that made me have to stay in Austin. But really big thank you and shout out to the organizers for setting everything up and going above and beyond to allow me to do this session remotely. So hopefully it's going to be as good and entertaining as, in person, and I hope you'll enjoy. So let's get started. Again, hopefully you all can hear me well. So start with slides. So if you want to follow or you want to check out the presentation later, or even just play around with it, you can scan this QR code and you will see the slides on your phone. And as you see on the bottom, you have a link to view the code and see how it was made, etc. I will cover that during the presentation as well. So a big warning as well. This talk is full of live demos and running code, etc. So hopefully demo gods are going to be happy anyway, but just keep that in mind. Don't want to spend too much time around this, and I usually like to ask a lot of questions to the audience to get a feeling of who we are and major interests and level of expertise, etc. Unfortunately, that's going to be hard today. So I just wanted to highlight here, in addition to what I mentioned before, I'm quite multicultural. I was born in Brazil, from a big Italian family, lived half of my life in Italy, and been in the US for almost, 8 or 9 years. That to say that I really like knowing more about culture. I love connecting with people, etc. So if you like the talk or have any feedback, etc., reach out on social media, and I'll be happy to connect. So first of all, hello again, and thank you for the opportunity. So I thought of starting with what is PyScript. And again, usually this question would be quite entertaining, interactive during in person, but even remotely, I hope we'll get the same kind of sense to it. If you haven't heard of PyScript and you go to the web, this was especially true the first year, but you still have a lot of these things. One of the main things you see is that people have the impression that, hey, PyScript is this replacement for JavaScript. And you'll see a lot of clickbait titles like, oh, is JavaScript dead? Or, is Python taking over, etc. This is actually, the funny side of the web. This is another meme I saw online as well, quite funny. And I think it's closer to the truth, actually, compared to the other one. But I created this one, which I think is more, it's probably more boring, but it's actually, I think it's closer to how I see PyScript and the whole web ecosystem. I see as this really young project, very naive, starting to get our feet into the web of things and actually understand what it means to be a programming language running on a browser instead of a full-blown operating system, etc. And JavaScript, in that sense, has 20 plus years of experience, more than PyScript or Python, and it evolved with that in mind. Python evolved with different concepts in mind, and we see that as we develop things in PyScript. But this is the one that I like the most, actually, because it actually captures the overall vibe and context and community that we want to create. We don't want to compete as as much as possible. We want to actually collaborate as much as possible, augment other ecosystems and whatnot. So in my mind, I think the Python community has a lot to gain from the JavaScript community, vice versa. The JavaScript now with PyScript, etc., has a lot to gain, and we'll cover that as well. So in simple terms, PyScript is a platform that allows you to run Python in the browser. It can decide either to run, full Python with Pyodide or MicroPython for a speedy, a more snappier Python interpreter. You can decide it to run it in the main thread, or you can decide to run on the web worker and running code in parallel and whatnot. And it's actually not just Python. It's Python plus the whole ecosystem, brought you by the web itself. And all you need to run it's a web browser. I said it's a platform. What's the difference between a platform and a framework? Again, this would be an entertaining question in person, but I'll give you the answer right away. In our definition, a framework is a piece of software that allow users to write applications with it. A platform is a piece of software that allows you to create frameworks on top of it. So in that sense, PyScript was built to allow both users to create applications, but also users to extend the framework itself to create plugins and other things, so that they can add features without the main core developers adding those. PyScript is extensible via plugins. You can add new things. In fact, all the interpreters that we support and a few other features are implemented with plugins. And because of the FFI, the foreign function interface that is provided by most of the interpreters that we support, you can also have interactions between Python and JavaScript or other languages in JavaScript. I mentioned we support Python, Pyodide, and MicroPython. We also have experimental support via plugins to Ruby and Lua. They are not official. They're not officially documented, but they work. And in the future, we want to explore the idea of supporting multiple languages and allowing all languages to interact with each other. And we have a lot of focus on human APIs or Pythonic APIs to allow the web to be more friendly and whatnot. So why PyScript? First of all, if you saw the tech talk around what.js, and if you haven't, I recommend you looking for it on YouTube. It's quite funny. You know that JavaScript is not the most friendly language and whatnot. And besides, it's really funny that the most popular programming language, which is Python, doesn't really have a story for the two most popular hardware and software platforms, those being the browser itself and mobile and portable devices. But more than anything, PyScript was created also with the fact that people represent more than just technology. In fact, I really like this quote from John Carmack, basically saying, there's zero user value in very complex features or optimization and things like this. Software is made by, I'm completely destroying the quote itself, but the gist is that we do software, we build technology for people. If it doesn't bring value to the users and whatnot, it's just a piece of technology that has no value by itself. And within the Python community itself, the sense of community is quite strong, and that's actually in the core of the language. Being born as a programming language to teach programming, Python is quite relatable, and that's I think that reflects a lot in the Python community. So one of the big drivers for PyScript was actually let's remove a lot of the complications we have in the Python community, in the web community, and try to bring, a framework that allows us to do a lot of things with less. So, and as I mentioned, this is basically in support of what I said. Python doesn't really have a great story on mobile. It really doesn't have a great story on the browser. And as much as we don't want to face it, the packaging and distribution problem in Python is still not a solved problem. It's really hard to still, even just today, to create a Hello World application, package it, share it so that you can share with your family or anyone without technological skills. I would challenge anyone to do that in less than, I don't know, 30 minutes or 5 minutes. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to create PyScript. In fact, as you saw, beginning of the talk, I just shared the presentation with a QR code. And in fact, this presentation itself is a PyScript application itself. So looking into where to start, if you go to PyScript.net, that's the official home of the open source project. This is where you probably should start and get more information about the project itself, how to start. But in reality, it's quite simple, really. All you need to do to start using PyScript is to add those 2 lines at the beginning of an HTML page to basically import PyScript itself. And then you need something to say, this is my main entry point for my application. And this is the script type, my mpy. In this case, is telling us run this main file using MicroPython and use this configuration file to set all your environments. The PyScript architecture is quite simple. It sits on top of WASM, and depending on the interpreter you're using, mscripton, and then the interpreter layer, in this case, can be PyDide or MicroPython. This presentation is using MicroPython. But then PyScript adds a bunch of layers on top, adding functionality and making the whole API and ecosystem more friendly. One of the main limitations and criticisms about PyScript, especially the first year, the beginning, was, well, it's super slow. It's really not ready to build any production-ready application and whatnot. Well, that was true, but I think it's quite not true today anymore. In the sense that, yes, if you want to use PyDide, it has quite a huge loading time, in this, especially with limited network and whatnot, because it's big. It has the whole Python standard library and niceties, but it also packages a lot of the scientific packages as well. And if you're using them, you're going to be adding a lot of megabytes to it. But you can also decide to use MicroPython, which is quite small and loads almost instantaneously. In fact, this presentation is built with MicroPython. Let me show a couple of examples of things you can do with PyScript. Well, of course, I'm showing this one, and you can basically create a whole full-blown application. But you can also decide to have a REPL and basically interact with Python in the browser directly. In this case, I'm running MicroPython with this version on the main thread. I can run it on a worker, and it's not a big deal. You can run more complex applications. This one running scikit-learn, like in this case, creating a k-means cluster and displaying with, I think it's matplotlib. Another example, running a neural network inference on the browser itself. In this case, it recognizes numbers. So if I draw, usually it's not that great. Awesome. Anyway, so this one is running in the browser. There's no server connection. There's nothing like that. I could possibly just turn off my network and it would still keep working. See another example, running panel. A panel is a visualization library for Python on the browser. In this case, it's running k-means with n clusters. And if I just, interact with the plot, it's interactive. I can change my data set, my visualization and whatnot. You can do things like parse files, Excel files in the browser, which for JavaScript is notoriously hard. And you can just go and use pandas and do that with Python. You can do a SQLite. I'm running through those examples mostly because the time is short, and I decided to just add a lot of demos here so that in post you can open the presentation and see how those are done. But I'll skip over some of them. In this case, SQLite is another option because SQLite is provided also in WASM, and Pyodide has a port. You can just use it directly. This one, actually, I want to show this one because it's really cool. It's showing a visualization using D3, which is a JavaScript library, but from Python. So, and this one shows a network graph showing their interaction between different characters in different episodes of Star Wars. Actually, shout out to Valerio DiMaggio who made this demo, and I think it's pretty cool. And I need to show the code real quick. Well, the wrong link. I'll show another code for another time. So in this case, it's not only Python things. You can also access browser things. Like in this case, you can access the camera and select the device. And you can now control from Python. Let me close. Actually, I want to show the code for this one real quick because it's quite simple, actually. We are working on a new API to connect to the DOM and media devices and whatnot. So in this case, as you can see, very few lines to just connect to the devices, list them in this combo box, and then select something, select one of them, and then this button here allows you to take a picture. But going back to the demos, you can do other interesting things as well, like creating games, in this case, tic-tac-toe, whatnot. But this one is actually nicer, and it uses a Python game library, PyXL, to create a game. As you can see, pretty cool. But let's go ahead. Time is running short. If I had more time and it was in person, I was going to show actually that you can also connect your Lego robots and other IoT devices to your serial ports, and PyScript is able to connect with them and actually allow you to program them with MicroPython without having to install anything, which is pretty cool, especially in terms of education and working with non-technical users. People have been using PyScript in really creative ways to augment their documentation experience. In this case, this one is showing a cheat sheet around pandas that allow you to basically select a category or problem and do or operations, select an operation, and just directly run those in the browser so that users can learn without installing Python or pandas at all. Wrong click. People are actually starting to create new frameworks on top of PyScript. One of them that I really like, big shout out to Chris Lafra, is LTK, which is it runs both with MicroPython and Pyodide, and it is extremely fast. And as you can see, you can create interfaces with it. In this case, this is the code to create the interface on the left, and those are just buttons. DOM operations like this, inputs and whatnot. This is an example running tic-tac-toe. And as you can see, the code is quite short for this whole demo. It supports tables, custom things, like in this case. It has a cool support for pub/sub messaging. So if you want to do chats and async messaging, this is really cool. Documentation. I want to show a couple of things that are actually I really like. One is this. I really like the tutorial. So basically, you can create tutorials based on interfaces and whatnot. But we're running short of time. And as you can see, it loads extremely fast. So with MicroPython, loading times and performance is definitely not a concern. LTK, another cool framework that we are developing actually at Anaconda is Invent, that also it tries to provide a simple user interface to create new applications. As I mentioned, we provide an FFI to basically unify different FFIs from different interpreters. So basically, you can use anything in JavaScript from Python using document or window directly. We also provide a library called PyDOM where you and change, style and things like this. Um, and the same thing, it has a mix of pandas and jQuery type of syntax where you can query elements and collections and whatnot using the getter operation. Um, Let me show this. Actually, this is a very simple example, just showing, how to interact with the DOM when you click a button. We provide a when decorator so that basically can express events and actions through the code. So when you click on the button with the highlight ID, execute this function. And this other one, when you click on the button with highlight all ID, it basically turns the title red. Running really quick. This is just a link to the documentation. Basically, the thing I wanted to show is that you can actually load JavaScript modules just like they were a Python module. So we allowed you to load these, define these in the configuration, and then just import them as Python modules directly, providing an easier interface to users. And workers, you can also execute code in workers in parallel. In this case, you can see I have a timer in JavaScript and then a Python operation, a for loop that is doing something. If I actually show you the code right here, you can see that it's fairly simple and it's just running a loop waiting for every second. And as you can see, it doesn't block or anything. It just runs in parallel. The other interesting thing, which is not really super appreciated, is that in JavaScript, because you don't have access to, but in PyScript, we provide a bunch of patches that you basically transparently can just write to the DOM without having to care about it. Built-ins, we provide a bunch of built-ins. I showed you some, the window, the document, the when decorator, but we're running short of time, so we're going to skip. And I'm going to go directly to this cool example, actually. Basically running PyScript inside a React application, or maybe the opposite, running a React inside a PyScript application. And in this case, you have define an element that basically every time I click, I just upgrade the count by 1. So if I click here, I can do it. It just adds to it and whatnot. To wrap it up, PyScript is almost 2 years old, but it became popular really fast, and it has a steady growth. People are very engaged in the community. We're really happy, and we invite you to try Python in the browser and join the community. It's evolving really fast, but it's ready for production if you want to start using. Now, this is another fun slide that would be different in person, but either way, the best and easiest way probably to start working on PyScript is to go to PyScript.com. You're going to be familiar with this new icon on the left. Sadly, one of the developers created this one on the right, and every time I ask at conferences which one people prefer, I'm sure you prefer the one on the right, which makes our designer really sad. But anyway, to close, if you want to try it out, go to PyScript.com. I showed you all the examples on PyScript.com as well. You can see other code from other users. You can clone the projects. You can copy their code and whatnot and start creating. And I really want to do a public shout out to all the PyScript wonderful people, from the community. from the core devs to the community folks that are super engaged to people supporting the project to the Anaconda supporting the project, etc. I really thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for listening. I hope the experience wasn't too bad, even if remotely. And if you have any questions or anything, reach out to me on social media or on the Slack chat at the conference. And I really hope you have a great time at PyCascades. Thank you.